1956, Ann Wigmore took dairy and meats of all kind out of the diet, gave people plants that were raw, and now discovered something that we want to add to this, that sprouts were hands down, no question, overwhelmingly the number one best plant you could eat. Now, again, didn't have a high school education, didn't have any scientific increment, but must have been tapped into what? That consciousness that every once in a while you and I capture by mistake. Bing, whoa, that's where those answers come from. And she said, let's eat sprouts. Now, what happened starting in the 1990s when they started to look at plants and realized, as Dr. Williams has now, as the world's leading authority in this, established, organic ones are what you need, uncooked ones are what you need. But by the way, hands down, overwhelmingly, no question, what you need more than anything else is a sprout. Now why? Well, let me give you some examples. When you take broccoli, which is well known now, you know, that we've really done a good job in the health community to tell you broccoli is great for you. What is broccoli good for? Anti-cancer. But it's also anti-cardiovascular disease. It's also anti-diabetic. It's anti a lot of things. And then they looked at the sprout of broccoli. So if you look at broccoli, it's sort of like a flower. And by the way, so you know this, broccoli is not a natural plant. Man hybrid other plants to create broccoli. God didn't create broccoli, is what I'm saying. Basically it was created. And you look at that flower and then dry those seeds. How many of you have ever kept broccoli in your refrigerator a long time? It starts to get yellow. Well, you take it outside and put it in the sun or dehydrate it, it will actually turn to a seed. And they took those seeds and they started to sprout it. And they said, wow, broccoli is, out of all the cabbage family and out of all the foods we've tested, the most anti-cancer food. Then they took the seed of a broccoli and they sprouted it. They said, it is 50 times more anti-cancer than the broccoli itself. Now, since then, there's been a plethora, an endless waterfall of data and information coming from institutions around the world to show us that sprouts are magnificently at the top of the list for prevention of disease and premature aging. So it wasn't bad enough I had to eat those vegetables, but my God, now I had to eat these sprouts. Now, somewhere along the way, I developed a little bit of social conscience, and I realized when I speak to people in this room, and many of you sitting in your mansions around the world, you can buy anything you want, period. But I'm often out, as I was in Calcutta, India, or Port-au-Prince, Haiti, or the ghettos in Washington, D.C., and I'm talking to people who cannot go to the most expensive natural food store. And I'm telling them I can help them. Well, it's very relevant when I can say the most important food as far as nutrition goes, as well as medicine goes, are sprouts. Because you can buy globally, worldwide, without any problem, a wide variety of seeds, nuts, grains, and beans that can all be grown into a sprout. There is no seed, no nut, no grain, no bean in its raw state, uncooked state, unprocessed state, that cannot be grown into a magnificent food. Now let me also say, because a lot of you are very interested in nutrition, so they have you trained on nutrition, so I'm going to give you the training information you need here. And later in this conference, I'm going to be showing you the difference between plant-based and animal-based food. And you're going to be shocked when I show you the data and statistics on protein levels in meat versus on plants. Over time and time and time and time, you're going to see plants have much more of this nutrition. The highest protein diet in the world is the Hippocrates Living Food Diet. Let me again repeat to you. So when we train Olympic athletes, matter of fact, the Olympics just passed, how many of you know the strongest man we ever sent to the Olympics ate a plant-based diet? At least one of you, two of you listened to that. He won the bronze medal for the United States. He lifted over his head more than 800 pounds. Now, I'm only at 700. Not really. But the reality is, that's what plants do. And so when you start to look at this, that's why the Hippocrates diet is. Not only is it the most medicinal, but it's the highest protein. The highest vitamin. Where do you think vitamins come from? They are manifested through something called the photosynthesis process, where photons are captured from the atmosphere that ejaculate out from the sun, and the plant, the green leafy plant, captures it and converts it all into vitamins. Highest vitamins in the world come from sprouts. Plants have good ones in it, vitamins much more. If it's growing in great soil, the highest minerals, the highest essential fats. Anna Maria is going to be speaking to you today about the latest data on weight loss and essential fats and how incredibly essential the omega oils are. Where do you think the highest amount of omega oils are? Plants. Not the fish oil you've been conned into believing is good. Listen, holistic doctors, you're wrong. Study, keep studying. Don't get off the train 20 years ago. The train has gone further at this point. Fish oil causes cancer. Fish oil causes cardiovascular disease. And fish oil, by the way, is rancid 20 minutes after you take that poor creature out of its atmosphere called the water. When I put you underwater, you don't look or smell very good in 20 minutes either. And so recognize this is the highest mineral and essential fat diet in the world. So if you want the highest nutrition, you eat this plant-based diet in its raw state, without pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, genetic modification. And if you want the highest of it, the kings and queens and princesses of it, you take the sprouts. Because the sprouts, hands down, are the most nutritious land-based foods. Now, the other thing we learned at Hippocrates is that there were plants before there was land. Now, how many of you know that the very first land was now what we call the continent and country of Australia? The continent and country of Australia is 1 million years older than any other land. And when it came up, the seaweeds and sea plants and planktons that were floating around these plants in the ocean that created oxygen and atmosphere somehow got onto the soil and created grass. So Anne Wigmore, with her infinite wisdom, basically said, the medicinal thing that we're going to give everyone is called wheatgrass juice. Wheatgrass juice for a quarter of a century has been the most popular health food worldwide. Number one health food worldwide is wheatgrass juice. Now, something that tastes so bad that it stayed so popular must be so good. Now remember that. I drink wheatgrass every day. Do I like it? But I take it. Why? Because again, this powerful, 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 powerful food mimics and replicates in very similar ways hemoglobin in your blood. Now, not literal, but virtually, you're inoculating your body with more blood by taking the chlorophyll in this condensed form. 2 ounces of wheatgrass, that's about this much for my European and Asian friends out there, is equivalent to 5 pounds of fresh, organic green vegetables. So if you want to take powerful foods with powerful anti-disease, anti-aging medicines in it, take wheatgrass juice every day. Now, start with small amounts. Don't start with this much. Start with little bit, petite, little bit. Take 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops. Otherwise, you'll never drink wheatgrass again, I promise you. It's powerful. It comes in. It looks cute until you get it into the intestinal tract. Then all at once it explodes. It says, I'm going to get the bad guys. And boy, does it get the bad guys, because when we've had this looked at, it's been stunning. I don't think there is any disorder that it doesn't help you prevent. I don't think there's any disorder it doesn't help you prevent. So when the land came up, it was that. But let's go back again to the ocean. Now, the ocean was a second life form. The second life form happened to be sea algae. The Asians wisely consume sea algae on an ongoing basis. Anglos think the only thing you know algae about is if you eat the ungodly dead flesh of a fish in sushi. Bad news. By the way, in my book, Killer Fish, I show a report that was done in the New York metropolitan area that 65% of all the so-called raw fish that they were making sushi out of we're riddled with parasites and or amoebas. And by the way, when you cook them, many of these things survive. They're pretty powerful. They're old life forms. But the algae shouldn't be around sushi. They should be in your mouth. And people say to me all the time, because you're certainly environmental experts, well, if you tell me not to eat fish because it's also contaminated with radiation and heavy metals and chemicals and plastics and pharmaceutical drugs, why should I take algae? Because algae are much tougher than fish. Fish came millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of years after algae. Algae is a single-cell life form. Single-cell life form. It's powerful. It doesn't absorb deadly chemicals, as does fat. So that's why other creatures like fish, and you with our fat, even if you're not fat, you have fat, harbor heavy metals and chemicals, also festering diseases like cancer, like mental illness, like neurological problems. And the list goes on and on and on and on. Now, the original life form came before there were sea water. It was floating around. It was a blue-green algae, which, by the way, in our household and with every guest that's come to us for over 35 years, we strongly advise and suggest that they consume this blue-green algae as a supplement. This morning, right here in this building, I got up and I took 5 types of supplemental algae. The original life forms, by the way. Now, what that means, so you understand basic science, the origin of all life is where all life comes from. The origin of all life has everything in it that will ever come after it. Now let me repeat this once again. What creates life has a little bit of everything, including you, that came after it. Many, many things, even with the brilliance of science, we haven't discovered yet. Probably we're scratching on the surface. We sit here and sound like big shots and knowledgeable people to you. We're scratching on the surface. There's so many things we are yet to discover on this stuff. But the good news is if you don't mess with it, if you don't isolate it, you don't process it, you basically get it. And who cares if we understand it if it's making you healthy? It's preventing diseases like cancer and premature aging. Shouldn't you be happy? So the 3 major core foods that Hippocrates has used over the decades are algae, blue-green, green algae, phytoplanktons, and sea vegetables. The second thing that we use are grasses and their related sprouts. The origins of all plants. Do you realize grass eventually became a tree? Grass became a tree. Algae became you. Isn't that amazing?